Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Kadha, where we believe that everyone has an amazing story. And what an amazing story we have for you today. Jen, thank you so much for being here with us today. Jen is a very close and dear friend of mine. We met at the University of Washington, and she just amazed me with her stories of courage and leadership. So I think all subscribers today are going to have a blast listening to Jen. Jen is the founder as well as the CEO of World Awake. Jen, can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today, Julie. I'm really glad to be part of this with you. So my journey started out, I grew up in California, and my big step out of there was going to the Naval Academy. And there was a lot behind that, and it was mostly around leadership. I have been passionate about leadership since I can remember, since being a Brownie Girl Scout and having the first opportunity to lead a small part of our troop. And I remember shooting my hand up in the air. I wanted to do it. And I think at that age, it probably had a lot more to do with wanting to be in charge and be the boss. But it then evolved to this opportunity that I realized of really supporting people and creating an environment where people could thrive. And when I looked at my college choices, I was steered to the academy for a variety of reasons, but I ultimately chose it because of that leadership opportunity, and that I was going to be in a situation where leadership and the development of it was going to be unavoidable. And I loved my experience there. And then I served in the Navy for 10 years. I initially wanted to go one route. And a friend of mine at the time, who was more senior in the Navy, said, "No, why would you want to do that? Because you could do that. You can lead people," which I really was passionate about, "and have fun." And that's called naval aviation. And honestly, in my 21-year-old brain, fun was not part of the equation. It was all about hard work. It was taking on the biggest challenge. And what could I do with that? And that was the first time I really thought about making fun as part of my decision. So I did take his advice. I got to experience naval aviation as a midshipman and then ultimately chose that. And I ended up flying the EA-6B Prowler off of aircraft carriers. I was a naval flight officer, so more like Goose than Maverick for those who have seen Top Gun, different aircraft. But I was in the front seat or the back seat, and flew over 40 combat missions, primarily over Iraq and also Afghanistan. And in a multi-crew member jet, there is the opportunity for leadership, a lot of it peer leadership. Also back on the carrier, you're leading your division. So I was division head for one of the, for aircraft division, the maintainers of the jets, and that was its own leadership experience. But I really would say I got my fingers into leadership pretty intensely when I went back to the Naval Academy on staff, and I had to run an organization of 120 midshipmen, that's the name of students at the academy, volunteers. So they don't have to be there. So finding the right motivation and helping to guide and direct their actions to the betterment of the institution was its own challenge and really tested my leadership. And I learned a lot about myself as a leader and the practice of leadership. And when I looked at staying in the Navy or getting out, I looked at all these different options, and I really was ultimately looking for the best way to continue to develop leaders. And I decided to leave the Navy and start my career and business in coaching, because I saw coaching at the time, and I think still to this day, is one of the cutting edge skills of leaders, because it is really one of the best ways to unleash the potential of your team. And so that's what I do now, and I absolutely love it. I've been doing it now for almost 15 years, and wake up every day wanting to do more and more and more of it.
That's fantastic. What an incredible story, Jen. Like seriously, I don't know if I could have handled it. And then two, everything that you've said, it builds such a solid foundation in terms of being able to relate to new experiences as they come up. So obviously you love what you do, but what do you love the most about the work that you do?
The thing I love the most, and it really is something that taps into what I've discovered as kind of my superpower or my zone of genius, and that is when I can hear where somebody has been holding themselves back. And what I love about using that superpower is witnessing the awareness that comes up for somebody of how they've been getting in their own way, and then seeing a path to do something about it, right? Because I think as long as we look at somebody or something else as being the obstacle, it's external to us and we have very little control over it. And so I'm often reminding folks and helping them seek opportunity to take as much responsibility as possible for the outcomes that they're getting and that they want to get, because the more responsibility you take, the more potential you have to create change and create the thing that you want. So again, I love seeing that light bulb come on when somebody realizes, oh, it's not them, maybe it's me. And not in a overly harsh or self-critical way, but just seeing the path emerge through themselves is amazing. And watching them do something with it. I think, our best leaders are the ones who are confident, not arrogant, but confident, right? And that confidence, one of the key ingredients to confidence is a concept called self-efficacy. And that's basically the knowing that I can do something about this. I can make something happen, right? So that leads to self-efficacy, that kind of awareness that I'm talking about generating. And then that ultimately leads to confidence. And confidence ultimately also leads to conviction. And I'd say conviction is kind of that next step up from confidence. Confidence is vulnerable. It is something that can feel like a mask that we wear at times. It's easy to appear confident and yet not feel confident, right? But when you feel that sense of conviction, that's next level confidence. So this all just kind of builds one to the next. The awareness leads to self-efficacy, leads to confidence, leads to conviction. And those are the leaders that we need in the world right now.
How long does it take? I mean, obviously each situation is different, but in order to, like they say, you can't wake up a person who's pretending to sleep. But so typically, like, how long has it taken for you to build that self-awareness in somebody?
Sometimes it's actually very fast. And that's what I'm always looking for. It's kind of like when you go get a massage, right? And your therapist is looking for that knot, right? And finds the knot and applies the right pressure at the right moment in the right place. And all of a sudden, your whole back, right? The whole set of muscles relaxes. That's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking for what is that thing that's going to move somebody? But they have to be willing, right? And the way I find the willingness is, how important is that goal or that vision you're going for? Because if I can get somebody to that place of utter conviction and passion for that vision or goal, then you start building up that momentum and energy, I'm going to bust through every obstacle on the way. And when they then realize that they are the obstacle or they're a big part of that obstacle, then there's so much more willingness to look at it. And I guess I should say otherwise, I've had the question you ask, I've had this before, and I've even thought about it for myself before without it being prompted. A little bit of it, I admit, is magic. And because I can't exactly, and I hate that. Sorry about my profession too. And people talk about coaches as magicians, but it is really hard to distill down to the moment or the technique or the question that gets somebody to that point. But that, again, that's where I'd say the quicker I can get somebody tapped into the thing they want to create, the more vulnerability and openness they have about it, and the more energy that they build up to doing something about it. And it just makes them more curious. That's the other state. I try to get people out of any negative states or overly positive states that can actually be ungrounding, and get them to a more neutral place of curiosity. If from curiosity, almost anything is possible, especially if you're in a negative state, you're in a state of at least boredom or irritation and maybe potentially much worse, right? If you can get to curiosity, which I would say is really two things, humility and openness. If you can get to that state, it becomes the gateway to anything. So I would say maybe that's the answer to your question. If I can get them to curiosity, the quicker I can get them there, that light bulb is likely to go off.
Let's talk about something that most people either try to sort of not think about or not address head on. As a society, we look up to leaders, right? And leadership undoubtedly requires courage. And very often we think of failure as a negative outcome. What is your take on failure being an essential ingredient to build courage that every leader requires?
Yeah, that's a great question because you're right. People are really uncomfortable with failure. They'll say all day that they're not, but I think so much of what keeps us where we are and keeps us small is fear of failure or fear of looking stupid or fear of rejection or all three, So, but I think they're all connected. Failure, rejection, looking stupid, you could add other words to it, but it's basically that same feeling. And yet you're right. We need courageous leaders because they keep us growing. And if you've got to be able to go to the edge of your comfort zone and beyond, or else nothing changes. And leaders are all about creating change, right? They're not about just managing what is and the status quo. It's about creating change. So leaders have got to get us out of our comfort zone, which means they have to be courageous and they have to help others to be courageous as well. And yet when you do something new, you are going to fail. You just are, maybe in big ways and maybe in small ways, but that is inherent in the process of doing something new. So the thing about failure, and this was my big lesson, was when my son was in the NICU. He was born 3 months early. I ended up spending 7 months in the NICU and another 2 months in the hospital before coming home. And in the very early days of being in the NICU, he, as you might imagine, for that length of stay, they were very tenuous moments, right? And as one of his doctors said, he's one booger away from, being set back. So we were really on edge all the time. And one time he had a setback. They had detected in his labs that he was ready for a wean. He was on a ventilator. He was ready for a wean. And so they made the call, which is exciting because that means he's ready to support more of his breathing on his own. But the risk was always of a setback. And up to that day, we hadn't had any of these setbacks, these dreaded setbacks. And one day we did. And a setback is not just getting reset to the last level, but it's getting reset probably to a level even before that, which is just heart-wrenching because you want your less than 3-pound baby to be breathing on their own.
I have no words to describe what you might have gone through. Oh my God.
It was definitely challenging. I'm trying not to have a moment right now, but one day he had a setback, and I remember just being heartbroken and so worried. And worried, angry, confused. And I remember, though, the NICU doctor, it was a woman who said, I know this is hard, but if we never fail, if we never have a setback, then we will know that we have not been trying hard enough and we need to get your son off this ventilator. And so at the moment, I think that didn't hit me the way it does now. At the moment, it was like, why are you telling me this? None of this is acceptable. None of this is acceptable. Failure is not acceptable, right? And so for those of you who are hearing this now, you and others that will hear this story and might be in the throes of that failure, that is what it feels like in the moment. Is like, no, I don't want to be hearing this right now. I just simply need to not be in this place. But in retrospect, that was the most impactful lesson I had about failure. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you are not by any means reaching the fullness of your potential because you're not pushing hard enough. And it's a great reminder to myself too. It's like, boy, I just have to take my own medicine, because as I do new things in the world, I am going to experience failure. And I've got to be willing, to plant the flag and declare the thing that I'm going to do, and then risk looking stupid, risk rejection, risk failure, because otherwise I'm not trying hard enough to achieve my goals and reach my vision.
Thank you for sharing that, Jen. One, it takes courage to share it. And then two, to just have gone through it and be able to, look at it from the outside and take the lesson. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
I think you're giving me probably more credit than is due, because in the moment, I don't know if I handled it really well. I honestly don't remember a lot about that period, other than the stress and sleeplessness and constant pumping that I was doing as a new mom.
So essentially what you're trying to tell us is try new things, right? Don't be afraid of the perception. Have purpose behind it, right? In terms of why you're doing what you're doing, and then take the lesson and then keep going forward.
Yeah, failure is essential, because again, if you're not failing, you are not trying hard enough. And to some people that might be okay. But if you are like me, in that you kind of almost constantly feel that gnawing sense of untapped potential, then failure is a key ingredient, right? You are going to experience it. So it's kind of like, get over it. And as my partner says, embrace the weird. Embrace the weird. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel weird. It's going to be hard. Just embrace it.
I like that. Embrace the weird. That's going to be my new motto. All right. So all this great work that you're doing through your organization, World Awake, one, how can people learn more about it and avail your services if need be? And then two, how do you envision sort of taking that forward and expanding the scope of influence?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I've got a couple websites. One is worldawake.com, and the other is awakenedleader.com. And on awakenedleader.com, that's where I'm keeping my blog up to date, and I've got just new ideas that I'm sharing. They're often ideas that I'm having in my own life, or that I'm coaching others through in the moment, and just realizing, wow, I really want to share this with more than just one person. It could do good in the world. So that's a great place to see what we're up to there. And then we've got kind of some new programs that we're starting also on awakenedleader.com. But the big vision, so I'll share with you, I've shared it in kind of some smaller settings before, but not in a bigger format. So I'm going to share with you my 100-year goal. Because that's really the key to the vision. And so my 100-year goal is no more war.
Wow.
It's a goal that, I will not likely live to see this, right? And that's the beauty of the 100-year goal, is that you actually won't achieve it in your lifetime, but you can set the wheels in motion as powerfully as possible while you've still got breath. And some people would say that's Pollyanna of me. Some people would say that it's very counter to what my past is, and having been in war. Others who've shared my path have even criticized it as potentially invalidating their career as a warrior. And I would say I get all those statements, and I would say to the Pollyanna thing, do I think we're going to completely eliminate it in 100 years? Maybe not, but wouldn't it be cool if we could cut it by like 70%? That would be pretty amazing, right? And I think the ultimate war that I'm seeking to stop at its essence is the one within us, because if we can release that, I think we'd have a lot less war between people, and then between nation states and beyond. So so that's my goal. And so the path forward for that, I think, is really twofold. One is creating community around the unleashing of human potential, really creating, because community can outlive me, right? I think once I get the balls really rolling on that, that can be self-sustaining through a lot of different paths. A lot of different ripples can come from that. The second is to embed the skills in leaders that enable that unleashing of potential. So, and I say embed, not train, but embed it. Really just get it into essentially the DNA of leaders and the practice of leadership. That it in its essence is about unleashing human potential for the good of something else, right? For the mission or vision of an organization. So there are a couple of things that I'm doing to both of those ends. One, for the community building, is I'm actually for both of these, I call it Project Arete. And arete is the Greek virtue that's associated with the continuous work of unleashing human potential, right? Some people would say it's the virtue of seeking excellence. That's another way to say it. So with Project Arete, I've got both Project Arete groups, and that is the way of building community, creating kind of these intimate cohorts of people who seek that same kind of growth in their lives. And then connecting those groups together. So that's my vision for the community piece right now. And then in terms of embedding those skills and practices in leaders, there's Project Arete Leadership, which is going to be a workshop, but also additional support beyond that to really get the embedding of the skills in leaders. So that's what's coming up next.
I look forward to it. I'm sure that I can personally benefit from those initiatives as well. So I look forward to seeing how they all play out, and I'm sure it'll be pretty amazing. Well, you're on the One Thing series with other women entrepreneurs. So what is the one thing that you want to share with the rest of the folks who are listening?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I love that invitation to distill it to one thing, because it's not easy, but it's important. The one thing, if you could distill it down, I would say is to be the guardian of your mind. So you've got this idea, this big thing you want to create. You've probably got a passion for it. You've hopefully got some skills around it as well. Otherwise, it's going to be a hard journey. But I think the thing that folks underestimate is the need to be a guardian of their mind. And that's both around the information that you ingest, right? How much, when, what kind of news are you paying attention to? What kinds of books are you reading, right? What are you ingesting? And also, it's about who you surround yourself with. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so it's important to be sensitive to that, because whether it's at home or at work, in the community, it is really critical when you're trying to do something big, something that's bigger than you. You've got to be careful about who you surround yourself with and really curate that group tightly and set your boundaries and be okay with saying no. Be also okay. So that might be ending relationships or putting them in a different context or, in a different way. But the other piece is it might be about seeking new relationships. And to some degree, that's how you and I met, right? I was both nervous about who would be in that group that we joined, and also ended up being fantastic, right? Surrounding yourself with smart people with great intent, who help to lift you up and help you become more aware of your strengths, help you tap into your goodness and what good you want to create in the world. That's the one thing. Be the guardian of your mind.
It's simple yet profound, and I don't think people realize that they're getting inundated with information, whether it's through social media. It's just so important because that's perfect. And yes, we were a great team. Jen, totally. Well, thank you, Jen. This was wonderful. We wish you the very best. Let's all hope for no war, 100% in 100 years. So we wish you the very best, and it was awesome to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. It's great to be part of it.
Thanks everyone for joining in. That's it from Katha for today. Signing off. Bye-bye.